Hello and welcome to another edition of Mystery Us. I'm your host, Tony Pratt, and my guest co-host is Cece, Colleen Curtis, and she's going to be kind of interviewing me.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna interview him.
A strange experience that I had March 10th, 2012 at Werewolf Springs, Tennessee.
Where's Werewolf
Welcome
Springs?
to Mystery Us, Cece.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for the nice welcome. Yeah. So where is this
Werewolf
location you're talking
Springs,
about?
Tennessee is actually in Burns, Tennessee.
Okay.
And it's I probably shouldn't tell this because, you know, too many humans start coming out there and messing things up. But it's where Montgomery Bell Park dead ends into the Hall Family Cemetery.
That's a ways out there.
Off of Hall Cemetery Road. And actually, it's nothing new. This legend's been going on since the late 1800s, when supposedly a circus came through, and they had a train wreck, and a wild man escaped. And ever since then, they've had these sightings.
A wild man.
Of course, that's the backstory. But
okay, in that particular area.
In that particular area, yeah. And in fact, I ended up going there because. Just on a whim, I had investigated a report in Kingston Springs of a sighting there, and I had 3 ladies with me, and one of them had downloaded something from the internet from a park ranger who claimed that there was a white creature that would howl at the moon when the train would come through at night.
That could be somebody's ex-husband.
Yeah, it could. Or ex-wife, because my actual first physical sighting was a female.
Oh my!
Yeah, and it was at Werewolf Springs. I've had 2 physical sightings there.
You get an email or a call from a park ranger who is this is unexplained. This is a strange posting. Sort of thing.
And we just went out there on a whim. Really, we didn't really know that it was a Bigfoot location, but we just went out there since. We had actually planned an interview with this one lady, and she was unable to do the interview that day, so we did look in the area where her sighting took place, but we didn't really find much evidence other than some old footprints.
I have a question for you. Now, I know that you have gone on many paranormal, Bigfoot excursions, and you're kind of the man in town that kind of goes and steps beyond the norm into the paranormal.
Right.
So, having the knowledge of the different excursions that you've been on, what has been the most active? Now, this particular place, was it extremely active?
It's been the most active because I've been there less than 10 times, 8 or 9 times maybe, and I've had some kind of contact at least 7 times.
Okay, so explain to me, because I'm way out of my element here. My brother probably would be like, what? Because my brother is like very into he's a hunter. Yeah. And you know, those things come up when you're in the woods and you hear strange noises and you're thinking, could there be a Bigfoot around the corner?
Well, there won't be if you're a hunter, because the guns, for one thing, they could smell it. But the other thing is, there is a paranormal aspect to Bigfoot, okay? And a lot of Bigfoot researchers, stick with the mainstream research, and they actually ignore a lot of the paranormal evidence that they keep finding because they don't want to be discredited.
Now, how could that be? Now, everything that I've heard about Bigfoot stories and what have you, they always make him photographable, him or her or it. They have video or they have snapshots of Bigfoot. How can that be a paranormal experience when you can get that, tangible picture? Right. Well,
people can have paranormal experiences. There are a lot of cases of people actually becoming invisible. In war, in different extreme situations, people have. You
know what I call that?
What?
Camouflage.
Camouflage. No, there's been, and there's a lot of people that are ignored a lot. They'll be at the checkout line and
that person's invisible.
They just look past them to the next person. They just kind of blend in. But that's different. This is true invisibility.
Okay.
And that is a trait of Bigfoot. And
well, he would blend in. He would be camouflaged to a certain extent.
If
you're going to live in the woods,
very telepathic. They can read your thoughts, so they know what your intentions are when you come into the forest. They know what's going on, and they're highly intelligent. although they are, you know, an unknown primate. I mean, even regular mainstream science had postulated that Neanderthals, for example, probably had a group mind, like a hive mentality, where they could kind of read each other's mind, or they were all kind of on the same page.
I saw that on the History Channel, actually, where it was extremely interesting to see that Cro-Magnon and Neanderthals lived on the Earth at the same time, because their bones are basically found, their DNA is found for 5,000, like it was a 5,000-year span. And so scientifically, they were both on Earth.
Right.
And they both coexisted, but as we all know, you know, Cro-Magnon is extinct, and Neanderthal man lasted.
And the latest, greatest candidate for the missing link, so-called missing link of science that links, you know, supposed Darwinian evolution with turning into humans, which never really happened. Michael Cremo's book, he was one of my guests on the show, pretty much obliterates Darwinian evolution. Not that evolution doesn't exist within each species, but the species don't. You know, there were always ape men and always Homo sapien humans. But the latest candidate is Ardipithecus. I don't know if you've heard about that, but Ardi, they're calling it for short. And the bones that they found is like the Bigfoot footprints that I found out at Werewolf Springs, which have a big gap between the big toe, you know, more like an ape footprint. And the footprint that I got out there was 6.5 inches deep.
Oh, so you've actually, you have a footprint.
And it was a fresh one, and the reason I know it was fresh because it had just started sprinkling. This was the second time that I had went out to Werewolf Springs, and so the top of the sand was wet, but inside of it was still dry with a footprint. This was in the middle of a dry creek bed, about 35 feet across, with 4-foot high banks. So only one step to go across.
Well, Tony, what motivates you to go deep into the woods and do this? What is your motivator?
Well, originally I just wanted to prove it to myself that the phenomena was real, that, you know, there's this thing out there that's Bigfoot, right? And so I just stumbled into it. Really, I didn't never plan to do Bigfoot research. I was strictly a UFO researcher initially, and but you know, at the UFO location, the Secret Vortex that many of my viewers are familiar with, out past Murfreesboro, that was featured in Life magazine in the year 2000 in their UFO March issue of the year 2000. I went to a gathering out there.
Reminds me of Conan O'Brien.
Yeah,
Year 2000.
of like-minded individuals, and I pulled it up into the vortex, which is on top of a mountain. It's the size of 10 football
in Tennessee?
fields. Yeah, it's in Tennessee. It's just about 10 or 15 miles from Murfreesboro. And I heard this sound, and it was coming from the far end of the field. They call it the field, the vortex field. And I'm like you, I was like, what the heck is a vortex, you know? But a friend of mine, Sandy Nichols, encouraged me to try to film at the vortex, so he had seen some of my UFO footage and thought I should try it out there, because a lot of phenomena was going on out there, especially with the UFOs and stuff. And so I did, but when I went on a Saturday afternoon, every time I turned the camera on, the red light would come on and it would go right off.
Oh, like you had no battery power.
Yeah, it was like that. And I tried different power sources, different cable cords, everything, for about a couple of hours or so, and it never worked. As soon as I got it home, first try it worked. And later,
Something was drawing the energy
year
out of the
later, I
battery.
ended up filming one of the most famous UFO footage.
That got on Life magazine?
Well, no, but the Life magazine cameramen saw my footage, and they did verify that it was not any, there was no kind of, you know, it couldn't be any kind of Photoshop or camera bloom or CCD bloom or any of that stuff. It was definitely whatever I was filming was what was up in the sky.
Interesting. I mean, there's a lot of unexplained stuff out there anyway. You know, there's a lot of mysteries, a lot of people experiencing things. So many different shows on television now are kind of, you know, Paranormal State, Supernatural, The Walking Dead. kind of going into that, even though
it's all real. I haven't seen zombies yet.
I don't want to see zombies. Let's just put that down for the record. I do not want to see zombies. But it's
maybe Fred Thompson.
It's sci-fi. It's
only
fun.
series.
Who do you want to see for sure? But that is kind of a new kind of generation of kids are growing up to kind of enjoying the paranormal. And
yeah, I mean, it didn't exist when I was growing up. I mean, it did, but I wasn't aware of it, and most people weren't aware of it. And probably most people still aren't aware of it, but there's a lot of people that are.
Yeah.
And they know that it's real.
They're out there looking. I see a lot of stuff on the internet, doing kind of research for your show, and there's a lot of people out there videotaping and filming with their own camera different phenomenon in the sky, interesting things, trying to debunk it, trying to get it out there to see what it is, but it's all unexplained. Is that something that really fascinates you, is just finding out why?
Well, I mean, I initially just I read an article on the internet called "How to Film UFOs in Your Own Backyard."
Oh my goodness!
And so I thought, well, I'll try that.
How to film something that you may not understand or you may not see.
Right.
Just get out there with your camera and
just go out there. Well, no, it was a specific technique on how to do it. This guy named John Bro from California developed this technique, and there's a lot of UFO sightings during eclipses. And the reason being, if you block out the sun, and I proved this on Channel 4, our friends across the street came and brought their cameras, and I showed them how to film UFOs, and sure enough, they caught about a dozen UFOs on their cameras.
Which UFO is basically unidentified flying object, so it could be anything unidentified.
I actually prefer the term UAP.
UAP?
Yeah, unknown aerial phenomena, because everything flying around is not suspected to be, or it's probably not, because in some cases they're like living things flying around. And so, UFOs associated with extraterrestrial craft, and there's other things that are paranormal or strange or mysteries, like rods are a certain type of UFOs that swirl around in the air.
Interesting.
They call them skyfish.
It's a big sky out there.
Oh yeah.
And one of my favorite things to do is get out the iPad app to see the stars.
Yeah.
And what you do is, have you seen this before, where with the iPad app, you just hold it up to the sky, and it shows you wherever you are, because it's GPS, it's satellite.
Right.
So it'll show you exactly where you are, where the stars are, and it will outline each one of the stars, Gemini and Pisces, and it's really, really, really cool. It's great for the kids, but when you do that, you think, oh my goodness.
And when you see other things flying around, you know it's not that, because you've got everything identified.
You have everything identified, so you know exactly.
Very cool.
Yeah, I was looking at Mars. Mars is beautiful.
Right.
Red, gorgeous Mars up there. You think, oh, we're just these little tiny ants on this planet, aren't we?
I don't know.
We're little dots.
We may be up on Mars too. I don't know.
Yeah.
The Illuminati has a secret base on Mars.
And
That's what I heard. I don't know.
And there's the secret handshake to that, I'm sure, on Mars.
But anyway, back to my initial entry into Bigfoot, because that's what our main focus is, the Bigfoot thing. I went out to the Vortex and went back a few days later. They were having a gathering, basically potluck gathering, of mainly people who were interested in the UFOs, and contactees and abductees. Contactees are people who have telepathic contact or claim that UFOs are, giving them messages, that type of thing. So it's definitely more of a paranormal thing in that case. But the abductees, claim it's a physical thing where they're taken through the walls of their home, and all these. Everybody knows about the abductees. But anyway, so I decided to pull up to the Vortex before I went to the party, and just check out the Vortex for myself to see, what's really going on with this Vortex. I just wanted to be there by myself, so I pulled up there. I was in my mom's Jeep Cherokee. She let me borrow at the time, and so I get out of the car, and it was so dark and it was overcast, so I hold my hand out, and I literally couldn't see my hand in front of my face. But I heard this sound, this rhythmic sound. It was almost like musical, but it was a squeaky, high-pitched sound, and I thought, what in the world is that? So I walk all the way 10 football fields in total darkness until I come up to the fence line. And then I kind of had an idea there was a couple of Bigfoots over there, and on the other side of the fence. And the experience baffled me for a long time until I later uncovered some of the true nature of Bigfoot, because I started hearing loud footsteps that felt like it was vibrating the ground underneath me, but I was at least 30, 40 feet away. So I mean, even an elephant 10 feet away stomping the ground is not going to make you feel much vibration. But I felt like, you know, with each step that I was really feeling the whole ground shake under me. But I later, you know, understood that this is a telepathic thing. I was just tuning in to the Bigfoot walking along the fence line, and of course I started walking along the...
So you only heard, you did not see?
Right, on this initial contact I didn't see.
You didn't see anything?
I didn't have
you
a physical sighting.
Heard something?
My 2 physical sightings were both at Werewolf Springs.
Okay.
But this Bigfoot walked all the way back up to where my car was with me. And
that's
then
scary.
I started hearing these sounds like an owl. But, and later I found out Bigfoot imitates owls a lot. And also, but they're really like very active owls. I mean, an owl going crazy. You know, it's like an owl on acid, you know.
Wow.
So you won't hear a regular owl really making all that much commotion. I've never seen it. Anyway, so when I actually talked to one of the property owners, who is featured in the Life magazine as well, although she keeps her identity secret, and she pretty much turned her back in the photograph. She had been having some telepathic contact with Bigfoot out there for a few months. And that was what kind of led to me going to Kingston Springs to do some more research with a lady who was on my last Mystery Us show, Sherry Malin, who is a Bigfoot researcher, professional Bigfoot researcher. And
what's going through your mind, and how are you feeling when you sense something? It could be a Bigfoot, it could be an animal. What's going through your mind?
Well,
how are you feeling at that moment? Are you scared? I mean,
when we first went at the back of the cemetery, we walked past some giant anthills, and there were 3 ladies with me, Janet, Patricia, and Sherry. And Janet and Patricia decided they'd go back to the car because there were like thousands of red ants crawling all over us all of a sudden. So we were having to knock them off.
Oh, yeah.
That kind of, they said they would go watch the car. So we kept going, though, about an hour deeper into the woods, and we came to a clearing where TVA power lines came through. It's about 40 to 50 yards across there. And we had been hearing footsteps because it was crunchy leaves, and we would walk along, and we stopped walking, but we'd still hear a couple more steps, crunches. And this went on until we came to the clearing. I looked to my right and I saw this female, reddish, bright reddish hair. And it was definitely a female, standing very upright, not crouched over whatsoever. And she went across this clearing in less than 2 seconds. So approximately twice as fast as Chris Johnson. So we need to recruit her for our team.
Oh my goodness!
But nobody could tackle her. I guarantee you that. But
well, where is this going? Are you just going to continue hunting for Bigfoot? And if so, what is your ultimate goal here? What do you want out of this?
Well, you know, there's actually a $2 million reward for anyone who offers up proof of Bigfoot on the Sylvanic.com website.
I was going to say, who's offering $2 million?
Yeah, this guy named Todd Standing has some really excellent Bigfoot footage on YouTube. The best, you know, some of the best ever. And it's a really close facial shot. And also there's a Bigfoot just on the hill above them that stands up, and they get a really good shot, clear shot. And it's estimated, you know, minimum 8 foot, 600 pounds.
So in order to get the $2 million, you're going to have a lot more than just a photograph.
You can't have a
or a
video. Yeah, you have to have a body, but it cannot have died of unnatural causes. You can't kill a Bigfoot and receive the reward. You have to either find a body or capture one alive.
Well, that would be impossible.
It is practically impossible.
Yeah.
It is practically impossible, but there is, you know, there are ways, and it's, you know, with a net gun and tranquilizer gun, you could possibly make a capture, but then your next problem is how to get that Bigfoot out of the woods before the other Bigfoot come and stop you. And also,
that's where all of the people on the, you know, milk carton box have gone.
Hey, it's possible.
missing in action.
They're all hanging out with Bigfoot people.
They're all having tea with Bigfoot.
And I think they are more like people than an animal, you know. It's an unknown primate, but...
But what do you think of the other shows, out of, you know, from your opinion, what do you think of the other shows that are out there on not even, it's, they're major network shows?
Finding Bigfoot?
Finding Bigfoot.
Yeah. Finding Bigfoot's a good show. I mean, they definitely had a thermographic footage of a Bigfoot at night there, and I think it was definitely a Bigfoot. And then when the I guess his name is Matthew Moneymaker, which is not a good, believable, credible name for a Bigfoot researcher, but he's got one of the best websites out there, and he's a very credible researcher. He kind of took off after the Bigfoot, which is what when I first started encountering them, I used to chase them. I chased one down a side of a mountain over there at Werewolf Springs, and which was really foolish of me, since, you know, no amount of martial arts training in the world can defeat a Bigfoot.
Okay, so what happens now? Your back is against the wall, you have your target in sight, you think, oh my goodness, this is the moment, and what if you get attacked?
I just thought, what have I got to lose?
Your life!
Yeah, I was more afraid of my ex-wives, believe me.
Oh,
so,
no!
Anyway, no, we were walking along. We returned to, after this initial sighting of just, like I say, it was under 2 seconds. We returned a couple of weeks later, and we walked to the side of a different side of the cemetery. We heard this sound, you know, and we looked at each other like,
that's interesting.
Wow. Then we took a few more steps, again, we hear this sound. And so now we're really getting curious, and we get a little closer, and there's a really thick area of trees and brush and stuff, and I start hearing this crazy sound like a Tasmanian devil, just, and they call it vocalizations and grunts, you know, and it was grunting, vocalizing. I mean, it was the god-awfulest sound you ever heard. So I just dove through, and
you just dove through.
I dove through the thick brush, and briars were hitting me in the face and everything, limbs, and ran all the way down the side of the hill, and that's when it leapt across the dry creek and was on the other side, on the other mountain. And I stood there on a wooden bridge and imitated every sound it made. And it was really agitated and mad at me at this point, because I was the jerk in the situation. I mean, I violated its space, and you know, but I just wanted to get a glimpse of another Bigfoot. That was my purpose, just to see again, because that 2 seconds wasn't enough. But it took me till 3 months later before I had a 5-minute long sighting. So
do you take your family along with you? Is this something that
I take anybody that wants to go. I mean, you know,
it's kind of scary.
The main thing, I think the most important thing, is having the right mindset when you go in there. Not like a mindset of like you're going to get anything over on them. In fact, when I had the longer sighting, excuse me, we had been out there 6 hours, and I took a scientist friend of mine who was a microbiologist, very credible person, done cancer research, done all kind of really legit mainstream stuff, who was not a believer at all, but she actually cited it when I leaned up against a tree and said, well, we're not going to find them until they want us to find them, or they let us find them. And about that time, a black male Bigfoot stuck his head out from behind a couple of trees that were down by the Harpeth River.
So you mentioned a couple of different fur colors. You mentioned red and black and brown
and white.
And white. So this is it's an education for me. I didn't know.
Right, I haven't seen a blonde one, but I've heard of them. Yeah.
Again, we're going into an ex-wife scenario.
Okay.
My ex-wife.
Yeah, I can go with that.
She's in the woods.
She's a Bigfoot now.
She's a Bigfoot. No. Okay. Well, then there is a variety. And what is there a species? What's the name of Bigfoot? What is their species?
Well, it's funny how they call it Bigfoot, like there's just one of them out there
Yeah.
that you know is doing all this activity all over the world.
Right.
There's many names. You know,
Okay.
there's Bigfoot is the name we know, and out west the Native Americans call it Sasquatch or Sepiak, and around the world it's got different names. Kakundakari is my favorite name from the Congo, from Africa. There's Almas in Malaysia and China, and the Yeti in Tibet, Himalayas. So there's many different names, and they have slightly different versions of descriptions depending on different environments and different places.
So for the new Bigfoot hunter out there, somebody watching and they're like, I'm gonna go find this Bigfoot or experience. Any suggestions?
Yeah, go to my YouTube channel, Mystery Us, and watch all my Bigfoot footage, and also go to Hub Pages and look up Mystery Us on Hub Pages, and you'll find a whole account. And if you read carefully, it'll give you a lot of clues on how to actually find Bigfoot. And when we were down here March 10th, Zach Shelton, who's a Bigfoot researcher, and his son Ian, we did some Bigfoot knocks on the 17th, but him and his wife Jenny were with me on the 10th, and we knocked 3 times, and we heard faintly distance 3 knocks came back.
You sure it wasn't Tony Orlando?
It could have been. It could have been.
Could have been.
There was we ran into a one camper that was a redheaded guy, but we don't know, you know.
Yeah.
If
for the young people in the audience, Tony Orlando had the song "Knock 3 Times."
Knock 3 times. Oh, I got the reference now. Very good. You're the music aficionado here. But yeah, I mean, we knocked 4 times and it came back 4, and we did this for a long period of time, and at least an hour. And then we did 5 knocks, and it came back about 20 or 30 knocks. And then we walked about 1,000 yards in the direction of the sound to get closer, and it came back 3 really loud knocks. And it was just incredible.
And there's nobody else in the woods knocking somewhere like millions of miles away?
As a matter of fact, it was total dead silence in the woods on the 10th, except for these particular sounds. And we did hear some bird sounds toward the end, but it sounded like a person imitating a bird. And then when we got back to the cemetery, it was an owl, and it sounded just like the owl. Owls usually, like I say, are not that wild, but I mean, it could have just been a regular owl. But then as I was leaving the park, I saw something running along beside of me in the woods, you know, and I'm doing about 35, 40 miles an hour, and this was a bipedal something or another. I mean, it was just a shadowy figure. It wasn't a clear sighting where I was looking into its eyes for 5 minutes like before. It was just so, you know, that was just incidental contact. And then when I got back to Bellevue, and this is the part of the story I can't leave out, that's why we have to keep going here, I had a UFO sighting. A friend of mine who doesn't want her name given, a really good friend of mine who you know who it is, invited me to dinner, and we were going to go to Shoney's when I got back from the Bigfoot research area, and I ended up having to go to her house, and she followed me back, and we were by Publix on Highway 100, right in front of Poplar Creek subdivision, when we saw these 8 UFOs when we came to the red light. And everybody at the red light just stayed there even when it turned green and kept watching. And the guy in front of me pulled over in a truck and started taking pictures with his camera. And I went to the right, and my friend was following me in her car. She followed me, and we were talking on the phone the whole time, talking about this. I was taking pictures with the phone, and 4 of them, and these looked like bright stars, except that they were pinkish color or reddish pinkish kind of tint, and 4 of them followed us down to Sawyer Brown Road. And I turned around to try to get a better picture, and my friend pulled over at a pub nearby, and 2 of the UFOs followed her to this pub, and one got in front of my car and stayed in front of my car for about 5 miles. And I went over to Kroger there. Actually, I stopped at this shopping center, the center of Bellevue, and it was still with me. It was still right in front of me, and so I went over behind Kroger so I could get out of the city.
When you say lights, could you explain what you mean by that?
It
like
looked
when
like
you're saying lights?
it's a bright light like a star. It looked just like a
How
star,
far away
except
was
it was
it?
pink.
How far away was this
I have
light?
no way to know. I know it was at least farther away than the subdivision, and I could see the lines, the power lines. You know.
So this wasn't a star that was a particular star, shooting star, or something following you?
Well, these things were not just hovering in the air. They were kind of swaying back and forth, and then they kind of rearranged themselves really quick. Two different ones came close together like they were touching, and then they separated again. Wasn't like no normal aircraft or helicopters can move like this.
It couldn't have been something that was actually flying in the sky. I guess that's what I'm trying to get at.
It was something flying in the sky.
But it wasn't something
I don't know
man-made
what that
flying in
was.
the sky.
It wasn't anything that the public knows about. I mean, a lot of UFOs could be military, secret military craft and
I
things.
think about that
especially
too,
the
yeah.
triangular craft.
Yeah.
I had a sighting outside my Taekwondo school in Hopkinsville, Kentucky in 1984. And that was kind of what really opened my mind to there really is something to this UFO stuff. And so at any rate, this one UFO, I say followed me, but it was in front of me. And when I speeded up, it would speed up. When I slowed down, and if I stopped at a red light, it just stopped. On top of a hill, and when I got halfway up the hill, I stopped the car because I didn't have any city lights at that point. And that way I could take one picture, and that was the only picture that actually came out of the UFO. And
So you do have a picture of that. You can put that
Mm-hmm.
up on the screen.
Yeah, it won't mean a whole lot. It's not as dramatic as my other UFO footage, obviously, because it's just a light in the sky. But the two UFOs that were following my friend continued to follow her, and we ended up going to Waffle House, and they went all the way to Waffle House. And I get to Waffle House, and I saw her two UFOs. We were talking on the phone the whole time, and we went into Waffle House and ate for about an hour and a half, and continued to see them out the window.
What do you think it was?
It's hard to say. I mean, you know, the phenomena, it seemed to have a connection with the Bigfoot sightings, which there seems to be a connection between Bigfoots and UFOs in a lot of cases, or there's the phenomena, you know, there's a bleed over where people have sightings of UFOs in conjunction, and it seems to relate to Bigfoot activity that they're observing.
Do you think that you are more aware? You're more aware than the average citizen who doesn't look for Bigfoot, who doesn't look for UFOs?
Yeah, you
They're
have to
just,
seek
you're
if you
more,
want to find.
Yeah.
But it's not that difficult to find the phenomena. You still won't know. You won't nail it down, you know, but you'll know that I saw it. It exists. It's real.
And you do have some footage that you want to show the audience about the excursion you took with.
Right. I'm going to show the audience what the tree knocks look like.
Yeah.
And also, we saw a really unique marker of a tree that was broken over, which Bigfoot leave markers a lot of times, kind of like Blair Witch.
Yeah.
They'll make X's. And more X's, and as you get closer and closer to where they don't want you to be, there'll just be a wall of X's that we ran into with hundreds and hundreds of feet of briar patch behind it. So we figured that was a escape hatch.
Okay.
But yeah, there's a lot of different theories about the invisibility of Bigfoot and how this occurs, whether they're actually becoming interdimensional. But my theory is that they're still there. They can be right in front of you. They've thrown rocks and hit an oak tree beside my head that sounded as loud as a gunshot, like eight in a row. But I just said, you know, we're resting right now. We've been here 6 hours. We're getting ready to leave and go eat because we're hungry. But unless those rocks start hitting me, I'm not going. Well, I've never heard of them hitting people with the rocks, though. They do it all the time just to scare people away or mess with you, I guess. But
Wow. Very interesting. Like I said, I'm completely out of my element
one
here.
last thing. There's a movie that I recommend called Letters from the Big Man that depicts the true nature of Bigfoot. It's directed by Christopher Munch, and it's excellent. And Kwani Lapsaritis, who's the top Bigfoot researcher in the world, in my opinion, is the advisor to the film, and it shows a relationship between a female hydrologist and a male Bigfoot who are out in the deep, dark woods.
Cinematic.
Yeah. Well, Cece, I thank you for coming on my show and interviewing me and
Thank
just
you.
trying to do this blindly, because I know it's kind of walking into all this crazy stuff about the.
Well, you're going to count me in on any of your paranormal.
Absolutely, we're going to do some
adventures.
location shoots. We're going to go out.
Location
We're going
shooting.
to find Bigfoot. We're going to find some UFOs and ghosts and
Yeah.
the whole phenomena, and hopefully get some video footage of actual phenomena to put on the show. That's my goal.
Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah, but you know, it's hard. You know, a lot of these shows, believe it or not, fake stuff.
Oh, I'm not going to go if it's
You
fake.
should not do that.
No, 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 no.
I don't fake nothing.
No,
so
no, no, no.
If I do have anything to show you, I will show you. But if I don't, I won't.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think it would be worth it to go out. Like, we'll find some haunted spots. Anybody out there watching, maybe you know of a haunted spot in Nashville that we can go to and do some paranormal investigating.
Thanks for being my guest host on Mystery Us, Cece.
Yeah, thank you.
That's all for Mystery Us.
Good night.